Hey guys, it's a market update. A lot going on right now. So USDC has depegged. We have a bank that has obviously gone bust in the States. How is this going to affect things? Firstly, what I want to do is go through what's happening with USD coin. I know a lot of you hold this basically to be safe, and it's depegged. You can see right here, the price is depegged from $1. You're supposed to be holding something safe that's worth $1, and it's now 10% off its peg. So I want to go through the calculations that I have here of, kind of like how the actual scenario is, and I want to hopefully just give you some data that may kind of ease your worries a little bit, and then we'll talk about SBV Bank and what's happening here. I do believe that the only solution to this is a massive government bailout, because this is going to affect potentially tens, like almost 100,000 people in terms of employees that can't get paid. And so this is major, and so not great news. But let's see how this affects Bitcoin and stable coins. Obviously, USD coin holds some of its reserves with Silicon Valley Bank, and therefore we don't know how much is in there that is above the FDIC insurance, meaning that if it's in there, it's essentially potentially lost or going through a large, long court battle where those assets can't be paid out as redemptions, right? So that is why it's depegging. However, if we take a step back and look at this, we'll go through what I think is actually the normal scenario or worst case scenario right here. So I'll leave timestamps for everything down in the description as well. We'll firstly go through the Circle situation, how many assets they actually have, how much of their cash is actually exposed to Silicon Valley Bank. They do have an exposure here, they've said that, and there is going to be some sort of loss for them on this if there isn't a bailout or something else, some sort of sale of the assets or something like that. At the very least, there is going to be some cash that they just can't use for redemptions right now, which is obviously not great. However, I don't think it's terrible news in the long run if you can have some patience here. So I'll try and go through exactly what Circle have right now. So Circle essentially are a money market fund. The Circle or the USD coin that you see in crypto, it's valued at $1 because people expect that there is $1 for every 1 unit. A unit of USD coin is obviously $1 because they say they have $1 in a bank account banking that. However, when some of the funds right here are tied up in a bank account of a bust bank, you essentially have a situation where each unit, you have 40 billion units. Let's say this was trading at 40 billion, last week, 40 billion units with less than $40 billion backing those units. Hence, the price per unit has to fall because it's just a net asset value fund right here, as you can see. However, currently trading at 89 cents. I believe that the net asset value is actually higher than that. But of course, it's a weekend. People are selling out because they have fear and they just don't know what's happening. So here is what I have. These figures are rounded off to, the nearest percent or something, just to make it easy. So these aren't specific, but I think they're a rough guide. So this is how the USD coin works. 80% of the value of USD coin, which is this right here, is held in US treasuries. That's actually good news. Most of that is held with BNY Mellon, the world's largest custodian, and so I don't see any problems here. Now, also the vast majority of the US debt that Circle holds is short dated, meaning most of this stuff, I think, matures within a kind of 1 to 3 month window. That's also great news. However, of course, if you get a bunch of redemptions now, and what are Circle going to do with stuff that redeems in 3 months' time? There is a duration mismatch here, potentially, if there is a bank run of people trying to withdraw USD coin into dollars. That's the issue right here. Now, for the most part, 80% of the funds are in US treasuries, and most of that is short dated. So that's absolutely fine. No issues there. That money is there. If you just wait, a lot of that money is going to be redeemed and not going to be an issue. The issue right now is that Circle does have some US dollar cash sitting with Silicon Valley Bank, which is now essentially bankrupt and bust as a bank. And so, of course, how much of this right here is held in accounts that are not FDIC insured. FDIC only goes up to 250K. They potentially have up to $2.5 billion at this bank. And so, that's an issue. At the very least, it's going to be stuck there whilst they try and either bail out this bank or sell it off to other banks to inject cash, or just go through a bankruptcy process or something else, or a restructuring, Chapter 11 or something like that. So 20% of Circle's funds of the whole thing are held in cash. So around 8 billion, and I've worked on a 40 billion market cap, or 40 billion in circulation. Around 20% of that is in cash. That is actually split up between different banks, one of those being Silicon Valley Bank. So if we take around 30% of the cash that they have right now in Silicon Valley Bank, you're looking at around $2.4 billion worth of cash sitting there that is potentially stuck. And so that's an issue. The first thing is there is loads of cash in other banks to meet redemptions. There is 80% of the funds sitting in US treasuries with no issue. So it's not a UST scenario where it's like, not backed by anything. This is backed for the most part. However, there is, of course, up to 2.4 billion that's potentially, we don't know the situation of that. And so the net asset value of this fund is below $1. And so the price obviously is falling, and also the speculation. Let's call it around 6% of the fund that Circle manages is stuck over at SVB. That would give a valuation of around 94 cents on the dollar, 94 cents per unit, which is above the current trading price of 89 cents. You obviously have people in here selling out for other coins because they're just scared or they don't know what's happening, right? Or speculators here just trying to whack this thing. And that's obviously their right in a free market as well. So around 6% is 94 cents on the dollar. Now, if eventually either the bank gets bailed out, or they just sell off the assets of the bank, or sell off the other treasuries and other assets, and just redeem as much as they can for clients, maybe they can get around a 50% recovery of those funds, which would be fairly likely. I don't know the situation of SVB specifically, but let's just call it a 50% recovery. Now you're looking at somewhere around a 3% shortfall, around 96 to 97 cents on the dollar. However, that wouldn't come immediately. That's just what they have right now. So it's not a massive deal in my opinion in terms of, oh God, this thing's like not backed by anything. It's a very small shortfall in my opinion. However, there are duration mismatches here. This is going to take a while for recovery of assets if there's no bailout next week or very shortly. So that's one issue. The second thing is here, we're looking at, let's say, a 3 to 6% shortfall, somewhere around this. What can they do? Look at these arrows up here. That's the shortfall, right? It's just a small part of the fund. What can they do? Well, they can go to investors and say, look, we have a short-term issue with this amount of money. It's 3, 4, 5% of the fund. Give us money for that. Shore up our balance sheet, shore up the net asset value of the fund back to $1 for 1 unit. And that's that. BlackRock are big investors in Circle. So is Coinbase. Citadel could come in here. Other investors that have liquid cash could come in here and just give them that money, $1 billion. It's a lot of money, but if they just do that, no issues. And obviously the net asset value is back for one. And obviously they'll just go and buy back USD coin in the crypto market for an arbitrage, right? Because it's trading below net asset value at that point. So they could just get their investors involved and say, look, just plug the gap. They can put out a press release and say, we've got it, no problem. The reason why they would do that, I think, that's actually a very probable scenario, is that Circle is a money for old rope, okay? They take your money, they take your dollar, they invest it in the US Treasury market, which is currently yielding short-term like 4-5% on your money, and they give you 0. They are earning 4% or so on $40 billion in cash. 4% annually right now. That's the interest rate in US Treasuries. So they are printing cash. They're making billions in profit per year, investing in US Treasuries with your money, giving you 0%. So it's a profitable business. There's just this little shortfall right now with some of the cash tied up. It's a weekend as well. And so the banking system in the States, you can't send wires. Absurd, absolutely absurd, I know, but that is the situation. So you've got this kind of weekend shortfall, a few billion that will probably be invested or made up by investors. They'll probably be fine with it. Or they could just let all of these assets redeem and make over a 3 to 6 month period, probably, anywhere from 800 million to $1 billion just from that interest, and then just make up the shortfall like that anyway. Circle is a very profitable business, obviously, and this is a small shortfall plus obviously weekend FUD and fear that is driving the price lower. However, from my calculations here, the max kind of shortfall is probably 90 cents or so on the dollar. And obviously they can just wait for recovery of funds as well, and get investments. And so I think, worst case scenario, it's probably a few cents on the dollar here, but not a major contagion, nothing like UST. A bigger problem though is Silicon Valley Bank is so instrumental in the entire technology sector. There could be potentially hundreds of thousands of individuals that don't get paid their wages this month. And that has knock-on effects to everything. Car payments can't be made, mortgage or rent payments can't be made, and it just is this contagion throughout the entire economy. This is major, and I believe the US government are going to have to step in here. As you can see as well, this is a potentially very old data, but as you can see, there are some big crypto firms and other firms that have multiple hundred millions or billions of dollars in this bank that could suffer from a haircut, and this will send shockwaves through many different companies. Pretty much the whole of the tech industry has some funds with this bank. Now that means if you can't pay wages to anyone this month, there's just an acute problem. Silicon Valley Bank are absolutely massive. You can come to the website here, and they bank around half of the tech sector in the States. You can see here, nearly half of US venture-backed technology and life science companies bank with SVB. Venture-backed, so maybe the smaller companies, right? I don't think the very large companies, they're probably much more diversified, but 44% of US venture capital-backed technology and healthcare IPOs also bank with SVB. $74 billion in loans. This is not a small bank. I think it's a top 15 bank. $74 billion in loans. $342 billion of client funds in here. This is, this is a huge contagion if they let this bank go bust. The financial partner of the innovation economy. This is a very big problem with the US economy. Most of the growth in the US economy is technology or this type of sector, and you're potentially seeing hundreds, thousands of companies that now have all of their money locked up and can't pay their employees. From what I see here, it looks like this is going to the top straight away, right? So this is a US congressman, not sure which side he is on, but as you can see, my priority is ensuring accountability for the mismanagement, as well as protecting the most innocent and vulnerable employees of the bank's customers. I am asking the administration for a briefing as soon as possible. I actually think the only way to save this is some sort of bailout here, because otherwise, when we start next week, you're going to have many small and medium-sized firms, potentially not paying all of their employees, which is a huge financial contagion event. And so I believe they're going to have to come out very early Monday morning and really calm the market here. Otherwise, it could be real chaos in the markets. Binance and Bybit have both come out to say zero exposure to Silicon Valley Bank. Also, US dollar Tether, zero exposure here as well. Just check with the centralized companies that you use and trade with as well, just to make sure. How is Bitcoin going to trade here? It really is going to trade along with the rest of the market. If they let this bank fail, or they don't come out and say that they're going to put a large chunk of cash towards this, they need to find investors. They need to ease the market and calm the market here, because the other side of that is people worrying about contagion of this bank to other banks, to how much unemployment. And of course, you get sell-offs in the market at that point. Everyone's scared, so they sell off their their liquid assets, which is stocks and crypto. Bitcoin's going to be along with that, because they need dollars to fund their liabilities. And so they're going to sell off their assets. Now, if they come out and say, look, we're going to backstop this bank, or we've found investors, other banks are going to take it over and put a cash injection in, that's good news, and that will ease markets a little bit, and you may see a little bit of a bounce as the market eases. On Monday, it's going to be extremely volatile. Before any news comes out, probably sell-offs in stocks and the stock market as well. This is big. There is only one asset on earth that has zero counterparty risk and is tradable 24/7 in size, and that's BTC, maybe ETH as well, but They're both the same thing at this point in this situation. And so that doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't go down in value. When all of this is happening, people sell their assets for USD to meet their liabilities. However, the only asset on earth without counterparty risk is Bitcoin you hold in your wallet. At least you have that value there, and it isn't going to be in a bank that potentially will take your money because your threshold is over the FDIC insurance. If you have up to $250K in a bank account in the States, no issues, you will get your money back. In Europe and UK, it's a little bit lower than that, I believe, but there are insurance schemes in place. The problem here is that when these banks get bailed out, what happens? The governments print more money to bail out the banks, which means it socializes the losses across everyone, taxpayers, and you, because you are holding that fiat currency which is getting debased. When they do that, Bitcoin cannot be debased. So over the long term, that is why Bitcoin exists. This situation right here, you have an asset that you can use all of, and it won't get tied up in banks. And when they bail out the banks and debase the currency, this thing goes up in value. But over the short term, it will get hit as people sell their assets for dollars to meet their liabilities.